Hi y'all. Today I'm going to make an easy recipe that was one of my mom's favorites, and she got this recipe from my grandmother. It's called Apricot Bars, and it comes together really fast. You're going to need 1½ cups of flour, 1 teaspoon baking powder, 1 cup of light brown sugar, 1½ cups of oatmeal, 3/4 a cup of butter, and 1 cup of apricot jam. And you can use any kind of jam, but apricot really tastes the best with this combination. So I'm going to measure out the ingredients and we'll get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is preheat our oven to 350 degrees. I'm going to use my Trader Joe's coconut oil spray just to lightly grease this glass pan. I'm going to set that aside. And then you can do this by hand with either forks and knives to cut it in, a pastry blender, or you can use your food processor. I just am using my KitchenAid mixer just because it's easy and it's right here. So I'm going to use my flat paddle attachment. And the first thing I'm going to put into the blender is, I think I'm going to start with, I'm going to mix the dry ingredients together for just a second. So there's the oatmeal, the flour, 1½ cups of oatmeal, 1½ cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and 1 cup of brown sugar. I'm just going to mix that for a few seconds to get it combined before I add the butter. I didn't see any of that. So it's 1½ cups of oatmeal, 1½ cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and 1 cup of brown sugar. It calls for light, but I only had dark or the regular, so I'm just using that. It really doesn't matter. I just want to start mixing that together just to kind of blend the baking powder throughout the dry ingredients. And then while that's mixing, I'm going to add my 3/4 a cup of butter, and I've cubed it up because my butter just came out of the fridge, so it's pretty cold, and my kitchen is cool. So 3/4 a cup is 1½ sticks of butter. I'm going to let this go until I don't see any big chunks of butter. It's all kind of gone down to the same consistency, and then I'll be back. So it's almost getting there, and it just took about a minute on low, but you can kind of see there's all the mixtures kind of crumbly and about the same consistency. And I don't want to overdo this because I don't want to stick it all back together by heating up the butter, so I'm going to leave it just like this. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press 2/3 of this mixture into the bottom of my greased pan. So let me back this up a little bit. I'm going to take this off. Just kind of barely scrape the mixer beater, the beater blade, to get the good stuff off of that. So let's see if you can see this any better. So it's all pretty consistent. It's nice and crumbly, but the butter's dispersed all throughout. So we're going to take our dish, and we're going to put 2/3 of this mixture in the bottom of this, and we're going to save the last third for the topping after we put the jam in there. That's pretty good. I'm just going to press this. Oops. Press it into the pan. And the butter will melt as it cooks, and then kind of with the sugar and the flour help it just all stick together. I kind of press it to where it kind of goes up around the edges because I don't want any jam. I try not to get any jam to touch the edges of the glass pan because it'll stick and burn, and it's just easier for slicing and getting them out of the pan if that doesn't happen. Okay, so I've got the bottom layer in there, and I'm about to get the jelly. I'm going to microwave it for maybe, since my kitchen is cold, I'm going to microwave the jam for maybe about 20 seconds just to loosen it up. I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got my apricot jam nice and loose, and I'm going to just spoon it in little dollops all over the base, just because I don't want to pour it all in one clump and then spread it. It'll start pulling up the oatmeal mixture. So I just try to spoon it and get it kind of all over so I barely have to spread it. I'll just kind of spread it to get all the mounds to come together. And of course, I don't want to waste anything. And the measurement on the jam, you can go a little over if you want. Like if you buy a jar of jam and it's a little over 1 cup, just take the lid off and you can heat the whole glass jar in the microwave to loosen it. And just go ahead and use the whole jar. Like if it's a 10-ounce jar of jam. Now see, I don't want to pull too much on this because it'll pull up the crumb mixture. Probably the back of the spoon would be better to do this with than the big old spatula. But you can experiment with different flavors of jam or jelly to do this and see what you like best. I'm not crazy about apricots, I've never used apricot jelly or jam for anything else, but for some reason the combination of this with, I guess, the brown sugar and the oatmeal is just really good. I don't like any other jam with this recipe than this. Just tastes the best like this, and it may just be because that's what I was used to when I was growing up and my mother made them. Now with the remaining mixture, you can sprinkle it with a spoon, but I'm just going to sprinkle it by hand. I just feel like I have better control when I do that. And you can, I'm using a little bit smaller than a 13 by 9, but it calls for a 13 by 9 inch pan. So I could have put more in the bottom because I got a lot of topping here. Okay, so that's probably more topping from the top than you'll use if you use a 13 by 9 pan. I should have put more in the bottom, but I was afraid I was going to run out of topping, and I didn't. And the jam will kind of bubble up through and make that topping stick real good. So now we're going to put this in the oven, in the 350 oven, and we're going to bake it for 35 minutes, and then we'll be back. Okay, y'all, it just came out of the oven. It was in there for, what did I say, 35 minutes? Yeah, 35 minutes. And you can see the jam is bubbling up through the topping. There was a lot of topping on top. Usually it's not, you can see more jam through the top of it. But anyway, this one I was using a smaller pan, so I kind of just misjudged the topping. But it's still going to taste the same. It's going to be good. But anyway, I'm going to let this cool down, and then I'll slice it into squares here in a few minutes. Or it's probably going to be more like a half hour. Anyway, I'll be back. Okay, y'all, I've had it sitting for about an hour, and I cut it into squares. I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows, 3 across. So I'm gonna spoon out the first piece. It's still a little warm. And the top is more crumbly than usual because, of course, I had more on the top than usual. So there's a layer of the apricot jam right in there. Anyway, I'll leave the recipe down below. And thanks for watching. I'll see y'all next time. Bye.